Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another Rookie Card Collector 123 video. Today I thought we would do a fun episode. I've actually pulled out a nice size stack of my minor league baseball cards they're from mainly the late 70s through the 80s and early 90s, I guess. These are all raw. I don't remember if I ever saw anybody on YouTube showing minor league baseball, like TCMA issues and pro cards issues and things like that. So I thought it would be a fun concept to try. I've got quite a few more in addition to these, but just thought I'd pull out a little group and see how you guys like it today. So without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and start putting the cards up. So here we have a 1985 International League All-Stars, Kevin Mitchell. Mitchell was a prospect for the New York Mets during this time. He actually played on the famous Mets '86 World Series team prior to moving on to the San Francisco Giants, where he teamed up with Will Clark in the late '80s and into the '90s, probably the number one slugging tandem in the National League, with Clark batting third and Mitchell batting fourth. So that's a 1985 International League All-Star, Kevin Mitchell. Next up, we have a 1985 Edmonton, Wally Joyner. Joyner was a first baseman. He came up with the California Angels in 1986. This was his last year in AAA. He went by the nickname Wally World. When he came up to the Angels, generated a lot of excitement that year. He also debuted the same season as Jose Canseco. So those guys came up together at the same time. Up next, we have a 1990 Tim Salmon. He was a great outfielder for the Angels basically throughout the entire decade of the 90s. This was Palm Springs, the single A team. Salmon had good power and also hit for a pretty decent average over the decade of the 90s. And a very popular Angels star. Next up, we have Carlos Delgado. Delgado came up to the Toronto Blue Jays in the early 90s as a catcher. This was his first season at St. Catharines, which was a single-A Blue Jays minor league team in the catching gear. He would go on to become a huge star at first base for the Blue Jays, and then eventually moved on and played for the New York Mets as well, and put up quite an astounding total of career homers. So Carlos Delgado, that's a Pro Cards minor league card, 1990. Next up, we have 1989 Grand Slam, Sammy Sosa with the Tulsa Drillers. That was the Texas Rangers AA team back in the day. This is before Sosa would go on to the Chicago Cubs fame and all the home runs, and way before the steroids. So you can see he was a nice, trim, athletically built outfielder there. So Grand Slam, Sammy Sosa. Next up is actually a college baseball card. This is Mike Kelly. Mike Kelly starred in college at Arizona State University, which happened to be at the time my favorite college baseball program. Prior to Mike Kelly, a few years earlier, Barry Bonds played at Arizona State. And Kelly, when he was there, was often compared to Bonds as far as both of them being 5'2" players, fantastic athletes. Unfortunately, Kelly was drafted by the Atlanta Braves, number 2 in the entire country in 1991. And when he got to the Braves minor league system, he had quite a bit of strikeout tendencies and holes in his swing, and never really made it to the major leagues as much of a star or anything like that. But Mike Kelly, Arizona State College. Next up is a 1987 Pittsfield Cubs, Mark Grace. Grace was a star first baseman for the Cubs in the late 80s and then throughout the 90s. Fantastic average hitter, great fielding first baseman. Not tremendous power for the position, which kind of held him back a little bit in terms of stardom during the 90s, but great all-around player. Then we have a 1985 Omaha Royals, David Cone. Cone, of course, came up with the Royals as a starting pitcher / relief pitcher. Most famously played with the New York Mets after that, where he was one of the staff aces, along with Doc Gooden and Ron Darling and the great staff they had there in New York. Next up is a Burger King 1985 Huntsville Stars, Jose Canseco. So this would be Canseco's last year in the minor leagues prior to coming to Oakland in '86 and American League Rookie of the Year. Canseco, of course, best known for the steroid era. One of the earlier players that came out and openly admitted to taking steroids, and also, of course, disclosed hundreds of other major leaguers that he either knew or thought were participating in steroids as well. Canseco was the first 40-40 player in baseball, 40 home runs, 40 stolen bases. Then we have a 1984, this is a Kramer's Pacific Coast League card. This is Danny Tartabull. He came up as a skinny middle infielder with the Mariners, eventually put on some weight and became a star slugger for the New York Yankees for a while, the Kansas City Royals for a while, played on several teams, had some 20 and 30 home run seasons, and excellent player during the late 80s and throughout the 90s, had quite a long career. Next we have another Kevin Mitchell card. This is 1984. This is his Tidewater Tides team set card. Again, this would be 2 years before his debut with the '86 Mets. And he was sort of a backup player on that team and would become a star once he moved to San Francisco after that. Following Mitchell, we have a 1984 Kelly Gruber. Gruber came up with the Toronto Blue Jays in the mid-'80s as a third baseman. Had a few good seasons. His career was kind of short-circuited by injuries. I believe he did make an all-star team or two during the mid-'80s and late '80s, and just kind of fizzled out early because of the injuries and all. But good fielder, good hitter at the time, and one of the keys to the Blue Jays building a strong team as they went into the '90s. Next up, we have a Tucson Toros 1984 Glenn Davis. Glenn Davis was the first real slugger to play for the Houston Astros coming into the '80s in quite a number of years. I guess a true slugger, you really had to go back to Jimmy Wynn, the toy cannon, who played there in the '60s, even back in the Colt 45 days. So Glenn Davis was a first baseman, hit 30 home runs a couple of times, and had a strong strong career as a slugger, handicapped somewhat by playing in the Astrodome one of the toughest hitters parks in the major leagues. Next, we have a 1984 Midland Cubs, Sean Dunston. Dunston was a very athletic, all-around player, shortstop for the Chicago Cubs. He came up in the mid-'80s also, and had some power, decent power for a shortstop, had very good speed, stole a good number of bases, had a pretty distinguished career, never became a big star, but solid shortstop, and considering the era, quite the hitter for the position at that time. Then we have a 1984 Iowa Cubs, Joe Carter. Carter came up with the Chicago Cubs, eventually moved on to the San Diego Padres, Toronto Blue Jays. Most famously, he hit the walk-off home run for the Blue Jays to win the World Series in 92 or 93, I forget exactly which year it was, off of Mitch Williams. So Carter had an outstanding career, kind of just below Hall of Fame level, but a ton of RBIs, ton of 100 RBI seasons, several 20s and 30 home run seasons, and seemed to be a great clubhouse presence as well. Next, I've got a 1984. This is the Memphis Chicks Southern League team, Royals AA at the time. This is David Cone again. Again, Cone came up with the Royals and eventually moved on to the Mets, where he had his greatest success with the great New York pitching staff at that time. And also pitched for the New York Yankees and had some really good seasons there as well. Next, we have a 1983 Tampa Tarpons, Paul O'Neill. Paul O'Neill came up with the Cincinnati Reds in the minor league system as an outfielder. He came up during a time when the Reds actually had an entire outfield of rookie prospects, basically all at the same time. They had O'Neill, they had Eric Davis coming up, and they had Cal Daniels. All three were rated very highly. Davis became the biggest star out of the group, along with O'Neill. I guess O'Neill was kind of on a comparable level. Davis, I believe, had much more talented, but also the injuries derailed his career quite a bit. Daniels never really made it too big in the majors. Next, we have this is kind of a unique card. It came from a Baseball Hobby News, which was a magazine at the time, kind of similar to Sports Collector's Digest if you collected cards back in the 70s and 80s. Probably received Sports Collector's Digest in the mail. This one pictures Kevin McReynolds with the Las Vegas Stars, which was the AAA team of the San Diego Padres. This was a couple of years before McReynolds got traded to the New York Mets, and was also part of that famous Mets '86 team. Next up, we have a 1983 Beaumont Gators, John Kruk. Kruk was known as an excellent hitter, 300 career hitter. Not sure if he actually finished at that level, but he was always right around there. Some power, not too much otherwise of an all-around player, but excellent hitting. Played for a number of teams, the Phillies team in particular, and was famous for an all-star game at bat against Randy Johnson, where Johnson threw him a wild pitch, and Kruk sort of made a joke out of it. So that was a famous moment in all-star game history. Next, we have a 1983 Albuquerque Dukes, Orel Hershiser. Hershiser, of course, was the Dodgers star pitcher in the mid-'80s, late '80s. And then he played with other teams during the 90s, Cleveland Indians, and probably a couple of others. Hershiser had a very long scoreless inning streak. I believe in '88, the year that they played the Tigers in the World Series, and Kirk Gibson hit the famous home run. But Hershiser with Albuquerque AAA, and this is 1983. Next one we have is 1982. This is Tony Fernandez. He was a star shortstop for the Toronto Blue Jays during the 80s. Blue Jays had quite a few top young players during the 80s, built a really good team. I actually was a big Blue Jay fan back during that time. And during the 80s, they got very close a couple of times to winning the American League. And ended up disappointments. Losing in '85, they lost to the Kansas City Royals in the playoffs. In '87, they lost on the last day of the season to the Detroit Tigers. But really good teams during the '80s in Toronto. Next up is another Danny Tartabull card. Again, this is with the Waterbury Reds minor league team. I believe this is his first card issued. This is single A. And at the time, he was a middle infielder. Getting down to the end of the stack now. Next up, I have a 1982 Andy Van Slyke. Would go on to become a star center fielder for the Pirates during the Barry Bonds era, late 80s and early 90s, along with Bobby Bonilla as well. Van Slyke came up with the St. Louis Cardinals. Very good all-around player, had some power, had some speed, wasn't really excelling in any particular category, but just kind of a five-tool player that was very good at everything, but not really great in any one area. And also an excellent center fielder as well. Up next, we've got a 1982 Toledo Mud Hens, which was AAA. Frank Viola. Viola came up in the Twins system and joined the Twins in '83, and famously pitched in a couple of World Series for the Twins in the late '80s, early '90s, during the time that Kirby Puckett and Gary Gaetti and Kent Herbeck were there. The Twins had quite a team for a small market club, and Viola was always the star pitcher there. Next up, we have a 1983. This is a single A, his very first card in professional baseball. Jose Canseco. This is with the Madison Muskies. This was put out by Larry Frisch. Larry Frisch was a famous card dealer throughout the 70s and 80s and well after that. And he produced a set of minor league cards in '83 for the, I believe it was the Midwest League, including the Madison Muskies where Canseco played. So Canseco's very first professional baseball card. Here we have an '83 Iowa Cubs, Joe Carter. Again, this was the year before he came up to the major leagues. And I should mention, most of the cards we're looking at from the 70s and first half of the 80s are pretty much all TCMA was the manufacturer. From the mid-80s forward, Pro Cards made most of the cards throughout the late 80s, and then around 1990, things kind of got moved all over, all around different manufacturers. As the hobby started changing, mass production, junk wax era was becoming prevalent at that point. And I'm going to show one last card as we're getting near 20 minutes here. So this is the 1983. This is Ron Darling with the Tidewater Tides. Darling, again, star pitcher, along with Gooden, Bob Ojeda, and Sid Fernandez with the 86 Mets. Continued to be a top pitcher for the Mets throughout the 80s. And started to experience some injuries after that and did not have a real long, productive career. But during the 80s was an excellent pitcher. Very good control. So that's going to wrap up for today's episode. I think it was a lot of fun showing the minor league cards. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And let me know if you like it. It's something, like I said, I've got several more stacks, kind of like just about as much as these. I can show some more in future videos. I'll probably just sprinkle them in here and there when I'm looking for something fun to do. Otherwise, feel free to leave comments down below. And I hope you have a great day. And I'll catch you on the next one.